Hello, Patrick MacQueen. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. We're going to dive into some big things that are happening. One is national, and I can't wait to kind of dive into this. So thank you. As many of you know, Patrick is so kind to have these conversations with me, and we really just talk about things that are impacting real estate law, some fun lawsuits that are out there that we're going to catch everybody up on. But today, I really want to dive into this Corporate Transparency Act because we do believe that it is going to have an impact on real estate agents across the country, in addition to other small businesses. So fill us in.
Yeah, it's something that we were talking about it a little bit at the end of last year, but I think that it really fell under or off people's radars or never registered with people's radars. But it's basically a law that's been around for a couple of years now, and it's now effective. It became effective. Reporting is required now as of January 1, 2024. So reporting has begun, and it's called the Corporate Transparency Act. And the stated goal is to help combat, illicit money laundering, kind of illicit financial crimes, other sort of terrorist funding, that kind of stuff. But this new law is really going to have a huge impact on the real estate community, certainly, on other small businesses, certainly. And so people are kind of trying to get their minds wrapped around their reporting obligations if they have them.
So why small businesses and not big businesses, and what differentiates?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm not a politician, so I wasn't the one who came up with that. But if you think about the political lines you may need to make here, let's get all the small guys instead of the big guys. I don't know. And perhaps the real reason is that the bigger businesses that are exempt are already doing quite a lot of reporting to the federal government in some fashion or another anyway. I'd like to think it's that, as opposed to, hey, we're going to just, pick apart these small businesses and make them suffer. But my guess is, a lot of the exemptions that apply to this new statute, this new law, relate to companies like insurance companies, banks, and stuff. They're already doing a lot of beneficial owner reports anyway. So perhaps that's the real reason. But you tell that to the owners of the 30 million small businesses that are now going to have a reporting obligation that may take them from some reports 6 to 11 hours to complete their initial paperwork, and thanks, there goes my weekend kind of a thing. For most small companies, most PLLCs or PCs here in Arizona, probably going to take 15 to 30 minutes. But in some instances where we have multiple members, we're coordinating information, we have to update documents, those types of things. Yeah, from what I've read, and there's been studies on it, it's going to cost people 6 to 11 hours of time, and somewhere in the $1,800 to $2,500 for third-party professional help if that's the route you go. And so, this small business community has kind of been uptight about it and not happy about it because it's going to take a lot of time to comply, and people think that the federal government already has this information. And why are they asking for it from me if they're trying to? I'm not doing anything illegal. Why are you bugging me for it?
Yeah. So let's focus a little bit on just real estate agents. If a real estate agent has a PLLC, or they're part of an LLC, or they have a PC, that would put them in this category of needing to file this report. Is that correct?
Correct. And so I'm going to go over two key definitions. If that's all people take from this discussion, then that's great. There's two key definitions. The first is reporting company. Okay. A reporting company is a company that is formed by filing a document with the Secretary of State, or at the Secretary of State level, or its equivalent. Here, the equivalent is the Arizona Corporation Commission. So if you file a document with the Secretary of State or the Corporation Commission, whatever it is in your state, then you're considered a reporting company, okay? And you have to provide certain information about your reporting company unless you fit into one of these exemptions, which are largely for the big guys. The second definition, so reporting company is the key. The second definition is beneficial owner, okay? You're filing a beneficial owner report, and a beneficial owner under the statute is somebody who exerts substantial control over the entity. So maybe they're not even an owner, but like a designated broker, maybe somebody, a board member of a HOA, a board member of a nonprofit, unless it's a 501c3, somebody who has substantial control, like a board member, or a manager or a broker, or somebody who owns 25% or more of the actual company. So again, beneficial owner, we have a definition of, there's two prongs, and then there's the reporting company, which is the filing, required filing. So if, some people ask me, well, I own a trust, does the trust have a reporting obligation? The answer to that is no. And by itself, a trust does not, because you're not filing anything at the corporation commission or secretary of state level. But what many people do is they'll have their trust be the member or operate an LLC, in which case now the trust is a beneficial owner and has to report. So there's a lot of people who are like, oh, didn't realize I had this obligation. The other question I get is like, well, I haven't used this entity in so long. Is it an inactive entity that such that I don't have to file? There is a very specific definition, and I can go over it for you, of what an inactive entity is. A lot of people aren't inactive entities, even though they think they're inactive entities. So it's a lot of head scratching and frustrated people who are having to file this stuff that didn't really want to.
You said something about an HOA. What? Like if I'm a board member on an HOA, I have to file this personally?
I think so. Yeah, I think you're a beneficial owner. So the sort of information that we've seen from the statute and the interpretations that many other law firms have come up with, including ours, is that board members exert substantial control, or they fit the definition of what substantial control is under this new statute. And therefore, because you can exercise decision-making authority for the HOA, because you're the one who's coming up with new policies and enforcing rights and those types of things, you are actually a beneficial owner and are going to have to file a beneficial owner report, or the HOA is going to have to file it on your behalf, kind of a thing. But yeah, that's a frustration that a lot of HOA board members, in addition to the stuff that they already have to put up with, we're not expecting this.
Yeah. All right. So let's say that I need to file this report. What are they going to ask me? Like for 6
really
7 hours or 30 minutes of my life, what do I have to share?
It's mainly a personal address, name, date of birth, those types of things. And then what most people have to do is they're going to have to apply for what's called an identification number. So a little bit of a tracking thing here. It's called a FinCEN, FINCEN identifier number. And this is particularly helpful if you have multiple entities, so that you don't have to go in and report all of your information again. You just type in your FinCEN identifier number, and that shortcuts some of the process. So it's pretty basic information: physical address, date of birth, first and last name, that kind of stuff. And then what most people should do is have a FinCEN identifier number that they can use in the future.
Doesn't the IRS already have this information, or doesn't the corporation already have this information? I mean, just why another formality? How are they going to use this?
That's a good question. FinCEN, it stands for, I have it written down because it's an interesting definition, because it's newer. It's the United States Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They're looking for people who are evading taxes. They're looking for people who are funding terrorism. They're looking for other money laundering kind of schemes. And so there was a new rule that came out at the end of the year, at the end of 2023, towards the end of December of 2023, that basically said, look, federal law enforcement has an automatic right to this stuff. They can look it up, they can access it or whatever. Other third parties like journalists or something, they have to show some sort of need for it, right? So it is automatically going to be available to certain groups: FBI, IRS, Homeland Security, those entities, and then to third parties based on a showing that's going to have to be made. Now, I don't know what that showing is going to look like or how that looks. We're just not that far into it yet, but not too many people are really happy with having to go through this.
So what if they don't?
Yeah. What if they don't? It's a pretty big fine. $500 a day, possible jail time, like 2 years jail time until you do comply. So most people are like, okay, fine, I'll comply. But the issue is we're running into situations where, like, let's say that you and I own a company, a real estate investment company here. We're two members. We know about our obligation to comply. We're going to comply. We're going to file the beneficial owner report. But let's say there's somebody in Florida that's also a member, somebody in Michigan that's also a member, somebody in Texas that's also a member, and they don't know about this obligation to comply. And then our company gets hit because they didn't comply. What can we do now to mitigate that risk or to sort of offset that? Well, what a lot of people are doing now is they're actually having to amend their corporate docs to address this filing and to address a non-filing by one of the other members that says, look, you're not going to get your distribution. We're going to withhold certain things. So it's now creating some like disputes that never existed before. And so there is a big penalty. And so now is a good time to begin to compile your documents, to determine who the beneficial owners are, that kind of stuff. Reporting began January 1st, 2024. And so you basically have this entire year to report. You really only have to report once unless there's a change. If there's a change, you have to report within 30 days. And if you formed your company this year, after January 1st, 2024, you have 90 days to file that initial report. So there's a little bit of a different standard depending on how old your company is.
So next steps, let's say that you think that you need to report based on the definition that you provided. It sounds like the next step is we have to go get this FinCEN ID number. And where do we do that?
Yes. So fincen.gov, FINCEN.gov. And that is where you file your reports. It's all sort of click on the box kind of a thing. It's free to file, which is great. But yeah, so that's where you go to get to file and to get your FinCEN identifier number.
Okay. And you said earlier that if I have multiple LLCs, I just get one FinCEN number that I would use in each one of these filings or reportings. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. Yep. Okay. That's just so you're not repeating and cutting and pasting and that sort of thing. It may speed up the process, particularly for those people who have, many LLCs. Yeah. Or other corporations that are required to file.
Okay. So it sounds like it's fairly easy for an independent real estate agent that maybe doesn't, or maybe they do have a PLLC or a PC or an LLC. So it sounds like, okay, got a couple of hours, need to go fill out the form. But it starts to get complicated if you have an LLC or some type of corporation where you have multiple people that are now involved. And so you're saying that in those situations, the discussion now is, do we need to amend the bylaws saying if you don't complete this reporting, then what's going to happen to the non-completers? Is that a word?
That's right.
Completers.
Yeah. I got it. I totally understood. No, that's exactly right. That's what I would recommend people do. I mean, first step is determine whether you are a reporting company, right? And we went over the definition of that. Number two, are you a beneficial owner? That's the other, definition that you have to go through. Number three, do we qualify for an exemption? Most exemptions are for companies that have more than 20 employees and make more than $5 million in business, in revenue, or our insurance companies, public utilities, banks, those types of things. And then if we have multiple members, so step 4, I guess we're at, if you have multiple members, do we need to address this in our corporate docs so that certain of us don't get dinged by that non-filer or whatever you called it?
Non-completer.
Non-completer, exactly. I like yours better. Very legal.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, this is really helpful, and I appreciate you sharing insight. For people to really kind of dig in, just go to fincen.gov, right? FINCEN.gov.
Yeah, and then you could do just a basic search for Corporate Transparency Act, and there'll be some articles that come up. Again, the crazy thing is, like, we knew this was coming at January 1, but there was literally not much out there on it. And so that's what the frustration is for a lot of people. Are like, how am I supposed to know about a law that I didn't even know about? You know what I mean? Like, or how am I supposed to find out about this stuff when nobody's telling? At least now, if you go to the Arizona Corporation Commission website, they've got something that addresses, hey, attention, you know, you may have an obligation to file some information, to report some information. But a lot of people are like looking at me like, what are you talking about? What happened here? And yeah, and you know, the interesting thing is this has been talked about since like as early as 2018 or 2019. Finally it goes into law in 2020, and there's delays, et cetera. And so now in 2024 is really when it started to kick in.
And everybody forgot about what they were talking about because we had this little thing called the pandemic. So, you know, we've been focused on other things, and then boom, here you go.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I guess that's a good point. Yeah, and again, you know, there are lawsuits to try to, you know, slow it down or to make it less cumbersome, those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I don't know that those are going to go that far.
Well, Patrick MacQueen, the founder of Medalist Legal, who's a local real estate attorney here in Arizona, thank you so much for just popping on and telling us all this really depressing news. Now I have to go start to figure out if I'm going to be compliant or not.
Happy 2024.
Patrick, I appreciate you. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Happy to do it.